How's everyone doing on this beautiful Sunday evening? How's the weather? Oh, look, I see the chat. And yes, thank you very much for announcing that I had to go to the bathroom. That was awesome. Age of Aquarius. Hey, how you doing, sweetie? It's good to see everyone in here. I'm very excited about tonight's podcast for many reasons, but before we get started, there is an announcement I need to make about next week's podcast, you guys. And that's that due to the Super Bowl, I will not be going live on Sunday next weekend. I will be going on Saturday, and it will be announced. It'll be up there on the usual places, but it's going to be a Saturday Night Live podcast with Star Lourdes. And my guest, my special guest, will be Chris Breck from Minnopond. Yes, looking forward to that one as well. But yeah, I see everybody starting to gather in the room. So welcome back to Star Lourdes Podcast. Here we are in the room Sunday night. I hope everybody's having a good time. Mama Bear, yes, I meant to message you today. I'm so glad that you showed up anyway. You're going to really enjoy tonight's podcast as well as I am. Oh, that's really good. I'm glad to see all of you guys in here. I hope you're having a great Sunday evening, and I hope that uh, the weather is treating you well. I know it's crazy weather everywhere we go. uh, yes, hello. Oh, Raina, there you are, my dear. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much, all of you. This is really special. I'm glad. Oh, love you all. So glad that you're out here. This is awesome. All of my favorite people joining together in one podcast. Great to have you in the audience here. Oh, Age of Aquarius. Yeah, glad to see you. Everybody's glad to see Raina. It's like, hey, Raina, how's it going? Uh, I have to say, I have the best mods. These guys are awesome. These amazing. Maybe I'm a little biased because they are my mods, but I think they do such a great job, and so glad to see so many of them out out here tonight. Hi, Ruth. How's it going? So nice. Anyway, I just want to sort of let you guys know that the guest joining us tonight is a very uh, special man with a very special story that he has to share with all of us. And I I can't wait to hear the whole thing unfolding as much as the audience wants to hear his story unfolding. I can't wait as well. This particular guest is close to my heart. He happens to be my cousin, and um, yeah, I can't wait for him to come on and share his journey, his incredible story with all of us. Yeah, and he will be joining us any moment now, probably in about 2 3 minutes. So you guys go ahead and talk to each other in the chat, and I can see what's going on here. Yes, Mama Bear, thanks for acknowledging the mods. They're absolutely awesome. Yes, yes, Mama Bear. This is my cousin who has an incredible story to share with everyone, and I'm very happy to be able to, put this together so that he can tell the story to everyone out there. It's very inspiring and a little bit emotional. So have your Kleenex ready because I'm sure some of you might be feeling a little bit emotional over it. Thank you so much, all of you guys. Yes. So, James is his name, and he will be joining us in about 1 minute's time. Just waiting for him to come online, and we can get started. In the meantime, it was so nice to see all of you in the audience out here. Oh, nice. Yes, Mama Bear, Reina is in Chicago, much like our guest who will be joining us right away. He's also going to be coming to us from Chicago. How you doing, Ruth? What's the weather like in New York today? Let us know in the chat. We're all about the weather all of a sudden. The last few podcasts, it's just like, oh, did you say it's cold? Mama Bear, you're in Florida. Is it cold in Florida? What's happening? Okay, well, the guest has arrived. So please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming a man that I'm very proud to call my cousin, James Pierson. Here he is. Welcome, James. Welcome
I'm
into
here.
the room. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with what I ask all my guests lately is how's the weather in Chicago? You're joining us live from Chicago right now, so how's the weather there?
Actually, it's rather nice for a February. It's
Oh, is that right?
in the
Oh,
40s, and this week it should be in the 50s. So I
okay.
know that might change, but I will
Exactly.
enjoy it while it's here.
That's really nice to hear. Actually, one of my moderators, Reina, she's in Chicago as well, and so yeah, we were just everybody was talking about the weather in the chat before you arrived. So I ask all of my guests when coming on, maybe when the weather gets warmer around the globe, I'll stop asking that question. But anyway, thanks so much, James, for joining us and agreeing to share your story with everybody. We really appreciate it. And yeah, the people in the chat are all saying welcome, James, and saying hi, James. So and there we go. I love it. Um, so let's start at the beginning. You have a really incredible story to tell. So we're going to start kind of at the beginning, lay a bit of foundation for the audience because they don't know you the way I know you because you're my cousin.
Mhm.
But so let's start back to, back in the day when I first met you when we were kids and my brother and I spent a summer in Chicago and you lived in a beautiful house and you lived in a great cul-de-sac. You, in my mind, have always well, not just you, but your family always reminded me of Middle America. Like you guys represented, the baseball, the apple pie, America back in
And
the day when we were kids, right? You and
yeah,
your brother played baseball. We were out
oh
there, hung
yeah,
out with your friends, and it was just such a wholesome, lifestyle. The way the world was
yeah.
back then,
Mm.
and I
With a
always
little chaos mixed in there,
exactly because
as
that's life.
usual with.
But yeah, it whenever I think of, middle America, I always think of your family and you guys represented that, right? But I mean, times have changed and the world is not, what it is, what it
No.
was back then. So, um, what I want to do now is there was fast forward because there was a lot of period where we lost touch with one another over the years and we were growing up and going through our changes. So let's take it to when you were say, late 20s growing up in Chicago, what your life was like and how it took the turn that it did that led you to where you ultimately went. So Take it away, James.
All right. I would like to start with just a very short prayer, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Father, I just come before your throne in the mighty name of Jesus. And Father, I thank you for this opportunity to be your representative. My prayer is that you would speak through me, that my words would be your words, and those words would flow like poetry into the ears of those who have ears to hear. And I just thank you for this opportunity. Protect this conversation from the evil one, and may it go forth and lift up Jesus to the glory of you, Father. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen to that.
Okay.
We're ready to go.
Yeah. Um, I was very much a sports person. I played baseball. I was a pitcher, and I was actually very good at it. But then eventually I ended up going into high school and meeting a whole new circle of friends, which I ended up teaming up with the wrong ones. It really led me astray to starting to smoke cigarettes, and it was pot, and then LSD, and all those goodies. And it really knocked me off the path that I thought I was on. And for years, and this is a story I'm sure that many have experienced, just of all of a sudden losing any kind of focus. And I got really sucked into this, not heavily, but enough to where I was able to stabilize. I was young and fearless and thought I was indestructible. And but I kept it at an even level. And then after I got out of high school, I started working at a theater, a movie theater, and I quickly fell in love with the Candy Girl. And over a matter of months, we began to date. We dated for 5 years and then decided to get married, um, which was a big mistake on both of our parts because I believe we were so used to just the dating thing that when it became to be married, um, all the wheels fell off and our relationship ended really quick.
Oh, wow.
And got divorced 1 year after we got married. Basically, the honeymoon was over immediately. And it was very devastating to me. I really loved her very much, but I knew that we couldn't be together. And it really launched me into a period of heavy drugs. I mean, PCP, and I got hooked on cocaine really bad. And everything started to fall apart. I was burning every bridge, lost all friends, really dishonored my family in so many ways, disrespected my mother who loved me so dear. And it was a very sinking moment. The 20s into the 30s was just, I was out of control. My thoughts were only of myself, and I wasn't even thinking about what I wanted to be in the years to come. Everything was, what do I have today? What do I what do I have to get me through this day?
Mhm.
Um, and so
It
I really got heavily involved with cocaine.
Wow.
And I was never a drinking man, but I started to drink a lot of whiskey. I was never one to drink beer. I always wanted a quick fix, so whiskey seemed to do it. And came to the point where I knew I had a serious problem. I checked myself into a drug rehab center. Nobody had to push me there. I knew that I needed to do it myself.
Mhm.
And I went through it. It was about a month there, and I came out feeling okay. I'm ready to go.
Mhm.
And then all you need is one or two things to go wrong in your life, and you end up falling back on the things that
Right.
got you in that place.
Mm.
So that happened over and over and over. And finally, around the third time, I had been listening to my mother, who was preaching at me every night, praying, crying for me, just pleading with Jesus to win my heart. And uh, I just wasn't ready to hear it. And eventually I got around a group of guys at work that were all believers. And there was two on the left of me and two on the right of me at a packing line. And every day it was Jesus, 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 Jesus. And I was like, uh, I think I need to delve into this, you know. So I knew that I had tried everything. And so one of the guys that I work with led me to uh, meet his pastor, Pastor Phil Baumeier from Calvary Chapel of Elk Grove. And he led me into prayer in his office one day. And after doing so, I found myself questioning myself that I submit because it's what I thought I needed to do, or was it from my heart? So I struggled with that. And so I started to read some gospels, and I started to notice rather quickly that Jesus always called people publicly. Um, wasn't in a quiet corner, you know. Believe in me. He would do it with people around. So I was like, you know, I did it in an office with just me and the pastor. So I really need to declare it in front of people, you know. And so uh, amazingly enough, the next week somebody came in and was preaching about a discipleship program, and said if anybody really needs Jesus in their heart, would they please come up to the front? And so I was like, this is it, you know. I got everybody here watching now. So I went up front, and Pastor Phil looked at me and said, "Was this a rededication?" And I was just like, "No, I need to declare my belief in Jesus in front of other people." And so things started to change a little bit there, but the alcohol did not go immediately. It wasn't a quick fix.
Mhm.
It was a process. And the one thing that I missed out on was um, knowing that at least my belief was, okay, Jesus died, his blood cleansed me for all my sin.
Mhm.
And now it's up to me to walk a perfect walk.
Mhm.
And that would last about a day, you know, and then I would screw up, and then I'd be so upset with myself that it would launch me into a deeper funk. So even as a Christian, I decided I have to go back into the rehab center. And
Mhm.
so I submitted myself and talked with this one counselor, and he said, just tell me everything you do, you know. So I told him, and he sort of took his glasses off and started chewing at him, and he said, okay, I see you as either one of these two things. Either you're a liar or you are a walking miracle. You know, and I said, I guess I'm a walking miracle, because why would I lie about what I just told you? You know.
Right?
So they put they put me in the the wing that had all the heroin addicts and people that had absolutely lost their minds, you know. And I was in this corridor in this room, and it was just screaming and yelling all night, people being dragged down the hall by their hair. And I just crawled out of bed and got on my knees, and I just said, Lord, either bring me home or save me, you know. And at that point, I really felt uh, like a warm hug. And I got up, and I just felt a lot different. And I started really reading my Bible a little bit more. And so I finally made it out of that. And I had gone on a trip with our church to Israel. And as soon as I got off the plane and was there, I just felt like I was home. I just felt like this is where I need to be. And hadn't even made it to the airport yet.
Wow.
But throughout that trip, you know, we went to see all the biblical sites, and it was all these nice to see these things.
Mhm.
But I was so intrigued by the people. I had been pretty much of an anti-Semite up to that point. My
Really?
father was a good man, but he was very bigoted, and
Mhm.
he was always cursing the Jews around me. So I grew up with that sort of mentality. So as I was walking the streets, I was noticing something totally different. I was very intrigued by their personalities,
Right.
and I just felt really at home.
Can I
And
interrupt you
so
for
after,
1 second?
sure, sure.
Because I wanna know, like, were you there as a missionary? Because is that
No, I went on it. It was a trip with our church,
Oh, so you were just
just
there
to
as a
visit
trip.
just
Oh,
to visit the
okay,
biblical sites. But
right.
I got really sidetracked
Mhm.
by the people.
Okay.
And when they were going to certain biblical sites, I would always veer to the left and
Mhm.
go to the Wailing Wall and just watch all these people, and
Oh, wow.
it was really gripping my heart. So when I got back after the trip was over, I was already looking forward to another trip there, you
Oh,
know.
oh,
And so I started building my heart, and someone came up to me and said, you might be Irish and German, but you're all Israeli, and
mm,
that's where you belong. And I was like, I
oh,
really like it there, but I mean, how on earth would I be able to go there, for a long
right.
period of time?
Mm,
And little did I know that this was God's plan, you know.
mhm.
And so I started praying about it, and the doors opened up, and I found myself in my pastor's office. It was we had a prayer meeting. It was a morning prayer meeting, and we were discussing my trip there, and everybody was saying, yeah, it's 3 to 6 months and really give you time to really find yourself and this and that, and 6 months there will do you good. And as they're talking, and this happened for the first time, and it hasn't happened since, a real voice went off in my head that said, no turning back. And it was just three
Wow.
words, no turning back.
Right.
And so I sort of knew that this was going to be a long haul.
Mm,
Little did I know it was going to be 20 years,
mm.
and hopefully more soon.
And you ended
But
up spending 20 years in Israel, right? Correct?
yeah, I went back
But
home, and I mean, about a month or so later, I ended up there. I was a volunteer at a Messianic Moshavim, which
Mhm,
is like a kibbutz, but it was all Jewish believers and
mm,
believers from Finland. And so I was working in a wood shop, and it was like April, May, and it was starting to be 90 or 100 degrees every day in this wood shop. And
okay.
my job was just planing pieces of wood for 8 hours in this ungodly heat. And I worked from Sunday to Friday morning. And then my days off were Friday evening and Saturday, which ended up being Shabbat,
Mhm,
where everything is shut down, no buses, no stores open. So I was on this mountain consistently without leaving. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. This is not why I'm here.
mm,
And so I just kept speaking, Lord, why am I here? What am I doing? Did I make a mistake? Blah, blah, blah.
mhm,
About a day or so later, the soldier walks into this wood shop and starts talking to the boss that ran the wood shop, and they're pointing at me. And I'm like, oh, now what? What did I do? Here comes a soldier, come talk to me.
mhm,
And they had said that the Intifada had just started, an uprising with the Arabs after something Ariel Sharon had done.
mhm.
And all the soldiers needed to go deeper into the West Bank, so they were looking for people to do security on these certain mountaintops. So they said, you're 40,
Mhm.
and all the other volunteers are like 19. So we really need somebody that
Yeah.
is a little older to do it. So I was like, heck yeah, you know.
And what year was this, James, when this was going
This
on?
was 2000.
Oh, in 2000.
This
Okay.
was June of 2000 when
Okay.
the uprising started.
Mhm.
And so I did that for 3 years.
Wow.
And uh, I had some run-ins with young Arab yahoos that lived in the neighboring villages that came in every night to steal or
Mhm,
pillage anything that wasn't nailed down.
mhm,
And so my job was to chase them off the property. And
mhm,
s- pretty much they started to know who I was. And one night uh, I wanted some fruit, and they had a great fruit stand in the Arab village right next to us.
mhm.
And so I went in there, and I just had this feeling. I felt the Lord was saying, "Get your fruit and get out. Get your fruit and get out." So I went and got the fruit, and I'm walking on my way out of the town, and all of a sudden this red Volkswagen pulls up, almost runs me over, and all these Arabs jump out. And mistakenly, I had worn my Israeli police hat
Mhm.
as I was walking through this Arab
Oh,
village, and they began to harass me and uh, throw me around. And I ran and escaped into a Arab restaurant. And I went in there and asked them, please hide me. All these guys are after me. And
mhm.
um, within minutes, there was like 5 or 6 cars filled with Arabs with tire irons and everything screaming for me to come out. And I was like, no, I'm not going out. No way. I'll be dead. And so luckily there was a cook there that knew a path outside the back door that would lead back to where I lived. So I went out and went through the valleys and up and made it home safely. But the Arabs ended up vandalizing that restaurant. And so every time I walked through that village and the owners of that restaurant were standing out in front, they would always see me and they go, keep going, don't stop here, you know.
Oh,
So I mean, there was a lot of situations like that.
yeah,
But I
that's
enjoyed the work, and I had the time to go into town and really familiarize myself with people.
yeah.
And I had met an individual that is my mentor to this day. That I was doing night security, and he showed up, and we talked, and I gave him his key to his room or whatever. And the next morning, he showed up at my door, and he goes, You don't know me. My name is Bob Eskridge. And I just wanted to let you know that the Lord spoke to my heart. And he said, You're my Elisha, which is Elisha was the guy that took over for Elijah.
Right.
And so he said, starting tomorrow, training. And so he
Mhm,
took me into town and really gave me the ups and downs on how to make myself familiar to all the shop owners and the people on the streets, let them know I was a Christian. And he said, you have to watch your P's and Q's now. I mean, once you tell me you're a Christian, you need to act like one
mhm,
and understand that these people are not going to ask you about Jesus until they see him first. And what he
mhm.
meant by that was by my actions, you
Right.
know.
Makes sense.
And so, one little story that it did happen. You have time for that, or
Oh,
of
yeah, we
course, right?
absolutely have time for this.
Okay.
Fascinating story.
I started hanging out at this cafe called Cafe Hillel.
Mm,
I won't go into why I picked that cafe. It had to do with a beautiful Israeli girl that worked there. But I ended up hanging out there a lot and got to know everybody that worked there. And I was there every day. And probably 4 or 5 months after I had been frequenting the place every day, a Jewish individual, um, religious with the
mhm.
kippah and the
Oh,
curly Q
yeah.
sideburns, was hanging around a lot there.
Mhm,
And so a little while afterwards, one night I was sitting with my mentor and the owner of the cafe, just having coffee. And he came up to me and he said, could I speak to you a minute? And I noticed he was crying. And so I said, okay. And he said, this is the story. I'm here with my friends, and it was all ultra Orthodox Jews sitting at a table drinking their coffee and laughing. And he said, those are my friends right there.
mhm.
And it was my birthday the other day. And as a surprise gift, they sent a prostitute to my apartment.
Okay.
And I refused her. And I'm telling you this because I know that you're a Christian and I've seen how you act around here, and I know that you're trustworthy that I tell you the story. But he said, I refused her and sent her away. And now all these guys are calling me a sissy boy and that I'm not a man. And I want to know if you can go over there and tell them that what I did was the right thing to do, you know.
Really?
And I,
Really asked you to
and,
do this?
yeah. And
Oh,
my mentor looks at me and he goes, "Here we go,"
yeah.
you know. So I was like, "Oh my God!" It was the shortest prayer on the way to that table. Lord help me, Lord help me. And so I walked up and I sat down with these guys, and they looked at me like I was crazy. And I just said, "I just have one question for you. Um, your definition of a man, okay?
Mhm.
Um, is it somebody that says they're this and says they're that, but then when the rubber hits the road, they act the total opposite of what they said they were?
Okay.
Or is it somebody that says, this is how I am, this is how I need to act? And
Mhm.
when certain things happen, they stick to their guns and stay on that path no matter what comes at them." And I looked around and none of them had anything. And I said, I think the latter is
Yeah.
what this young man is. So you
Wow.
should sort
Nice.
of admire his character instead of
Yeah.
making fun of him. And
Yeah.
I just walked away, and the kid just smiled and said, "Thank you so much." So
Oh.
anyway, this is what I was being taught to do.
Mhm.
And so eventually, I ended up getting a job working at my church as a maintenance man. And next door to our church was a yeshiva, which is where they train young kids to be rabbis.
Right.
And so this kid was in this school.
Mhm.
He was very famous in the town. His father owned a sausage shop down the street from the cafe. And one day I'm coming out with all the garbage and I'm emptying, and he walks up to me and he's like, "What is this place?" And I said, "Well, it's a messianic congregation. It's
Mhm.
80% Jews that believe in Jesus." And he's like,
Mhm.
"Wow, yeah. I was wondering what's going on in there." So every other day he would come down and start talking to me and asking me questions about the place. And so I started to notice that on the evenings we had church, which was Saturday night, he was hanging out in front talking to all the Jews that were going up into the church. And as weeks went by, he was halfway up the stairwell talking to people, da 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 da. And one day I noticed I was security during the service, so I was sitting in the front seeing the whole congregation, and I noticed the door open up and this kid peeking his head in and watching what was going on. And so, and right about this time, I had to go back to the United States, so I left.
Mhm.
And then a month or two later, I came back, called my pastor, and I was like, "I'm back. Where are you guys?" He said, "Oh, we're at a picnic in the park, and why don't you come and join us?" So I was like, "Okay." So I went to the park and tried to find our church group, and finally spotted them,
Mhm.
walked over, and my pastor came out and greeted me, and he said, "Oh, this is a great picnic here. We got 4 or 5 barbecues going. One is chicken, one is hamburgers, one is kebabs, and the other one are these sausages." One of our new members, his father owns a shop, and he supplied all the sausages for our picnic. And he goes, "Oh, there he is right there." And this kid stands up, and it's the kid. And,
Okay. Yeah.
he gave his heart to Jesus.
Right. Mhm.
And it was my first, I was in
Yeah.
shock.
Wow.
But it,
That's
it just shows that you need to be, when the moment arises, you need to take any kind of feelings and shove them aside and do what you believe you're supposed to be doing. And I was
right.
scared to bits to talk to these
So
guys, but I
so
did it.
when you were in Israel, were you working like a series of different jobs there, or did you have
At
a
this time, when I was finished with the security job, I went into humanitarian aid for two
oh,
years.
so that was
And
missionary work, sort of?
It was taking the food and clothing to
Yeah.
Arab villages, to
Mhm.
Jewish villages.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of stuff happened there, but I decided to skim right over that because
Yeah.
there's more important things I need to say. This was one of them.
Okay.
That it was my first um,
Yeah.
introduction to actually laying a witness on somebody and then watching other people water the seeds that I had planted, and
Okay.
then seeing the final product of
Right.
this young Jewish kid. And now
Yeah.
he became a missionary to Europe. So now he's going throughout Europe preaching Jesus. And
Oh,
so, how many converts he has, I don't know, but I know that in God's faithfulness, it goes to my account
yeah.
because I'm the one that got the ball rolling, or God
Right.
did through me,
Yeah.
you know. So, that was one main story.
Mhm.
Um,
And
there
I
are,
ask you a question too. When you were in Israel, did you ever go to Gaza? Like the, I've only seen the
yeah,
photos and the video
yes,
of it.
yes,
It seems like a very small strip. Were you
yeah.
able to go in there, come and go freely when you were?
Not into Gaza, but right on the border. We had
Oh,
a program where all the rockets were flying into Sderot, which is Israeli village that is right on the other side of the Gaza border.
right.
And so we went there on several weekends bringing uh, clothes and food and whatever we could bring to them, and
Hmm.
little radios that were tuned into whenever there was a rocket launch, it would immediately announce on the radio
It was an
that
alert radio. Yeah.
hit the deck, you know,
Yeah.
here they come.
Mhm.
So I did that, but it wasn't a
But
major part of what I was there for.
you were restricted from going into that area. Like you couldn't just wander in and out of the Gaza Strip.
Not unless I had a death wish. It's
That makes sense. That makes so much sense.
not a chance. They got snipers all over the place there. There's
So
no way. No,
I
no.
want to ask you a question. Like when you were walking in the Holy Land and so forth, like just on your own by yourself, just your own like experience, did you feel super in touch with spirit, with the with God, with Jesus? Did you feel more in touch there than you did on American soil?
Oh, I knew that's where he wanted me. I
Oh,
believe in all my heart that I would have never made it out of the funk that I was in,
right,
because my problem was alcohol and pills at that point.
right,
And there's a bar on every corner in the Chicago area. And so many that I had frequented that there was no, anytime a problem would arise, that's where I would run.
yeah.
So I think to really cleanse me out of it,
Mhm.
he sent me there.
There. So it was a
Yeah.
different experience. And you spent 20 years there. Were you content to be just being there for 20 years?
Yeah.
Like you were okay.
I
Just
knew I knew I was supposed to be there. I didn't know the exact reason why.
right.
Time as it unfolded, I began to get a really great idea, but there needed to be a lot of surrender still needed in my life. There were desires that were in my heart that I think eclipsed my devotion to God.
Right.
I was trying to balance the both, have a little best of two worlds, and that
Right.
doesn't shake well with the Lord. It's
But
got to be Him first.
did you miss your family and your friends back home
No,
when you were
no,
out there?
no.
Not at all, eh? So your heart was full.
No,
You
if any family is listening, I still love you. I mean,
Yeah,
but
no, no, that's not. I have no question. I know you love and are devoted to your family. That's not. I just meant like when you were out there, were you homesick? Did you ever
no,
feel like I would like
not
to be with
not
my?
one day.
No.
I miss my mom. I loved her, but I we talked on the phone
Yeah,
quite often. She was so proud of me, and
she
you
was.
know, all
Right.
her prayers that she was praying that I would get out of that funk, and that I would give Jesus a shot, and so to her it was a dream come true. So
Yeah.
it was really wonderful. But I knew that I was still searching for a purpose.
Right.
I didn't know what that was. I knew I was in the atmosphere where that purple was going to happen, but I didn't know what it was yet. And it's a process, you
And
know.
then you came to work in Israel because I've seen the photos on Facebook and everything of these people that you got close to. A lot of them were handicapped people and people in tough spots. Like, how did that happen in your journey? Like,
Okay, this actually where I just left off is where that started. My
okay,
visa was about to run out, and every avenue I was trying to get a new visa wasn't working. So my pastor had said, "This is what I plan to do. Have you be a live-in caretaker of our church, since you helped build it.
okay,
Um, be the maintenance guy, be the guy that cleans it up, a guy that locks all the doors at night, and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to make out a form. We're going to send my son, the lawyer, uh, with you, and you're going to go to the Ministry of Interior and present this paperwork so you can get a visa to do so."
right,
Um, Ended up that his son couldn't make it to come with me, so I had to go on my own,
mhm,
and I had all the paperwork.
right,
And so I got called into the office with this one government woman, and I laid the paperwork and my passport on the counter, and she took one look at it and she screamed. Um, she was ultra orthodox and she hated Pastor John Myers. She hated the church that I went to, Shemensis on. And she looked at me and she said, "Do you honestly think that I'm going to give you a visa so you can steal Jewish souls?" You know, and she threw the passport at me,
she really
threw
said
all my paper, threw
that?
all my paperwork all over the floor. And
Wow.
so I was like, "Okay, it's a closed door."
Mhm,
And so I'm like, "Okay, ma'am, thank you for your time." So I'm picking up my paperwork
mm,
and my passport, and I got one hand on the door to leave, and I hear this voice from behind me say, "Do you really want to help Jewish people?" So I closed the door and I said, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, you know." And she
yeah,
said, "Okay, come sit down." And she pulled out a book and she said, "Okay, here's a number of this woman. I want you to call her, set up a meeting. It's for a handicap home for middle-aged people who have physical handicap."
right,
And my heart sunk when I heard that because I um, was petrified of handicapped people. I just didn't want to be. There is something that goes before this that happened when I left Yad Shmona, which was my security job. My desperation to get another visa, I accepted to work at a handicapped farm up in the north,
mhm,
and my heart wasn't in it, but I knew it was like I could probably get a visa doing this.
mhm,
So, long story short, I agreed to do it. Um, the person that ran this farm said, "Okay, you need to take a bus from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. And then from Tel Aviv, you got to take a bus to Haifa. And then from Haifa, you got to take a bus to the Carmel station in the Galilee Mountains." And I had two suitcases, a heavy shoulder bag. And by the time I got to Carmel, I was exhausted. I wanted nothing to do but sleep.
mhm,
And so I get to the station and the bus pulls up and the guy goes, "James Pierson?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, get in." And so I get in and it's like 40 very mentally handicapped people on this bus.
mhm,
And he goes, "Oh, sit in the back. There's an empty seat there." So I found one that nobody was sitting in. So I'm sitting in there looking out the window because I didn't even want to look at these handicapped people. And one of the handicaps got up out of their seat and sat right next to me and started talking to me in my face. And so I'm pressed up against the window. I mean, as far as you can go, you
mhm.
know. If that window was open, I would have easily fell out. That's how close I was to the
Huh,
window.
mhm,
And so we got to the place, and he said, "Okay, this is a story. Right now, I don't have time to talk to you, but everybody's having lunch. I'll take you downstairs and you can eat with all the handicapped people." And so he took me downstairs, and I didn't sit down with any of them. I stood against the wall, just petrified.
mhm,
And when the guy came down and saw that I was not interacting at all with any of them, he said, "Okay, come with me now. I'm going to put you in." in this little shed here.
Mhm.
And so I'm sitting there waiting, and it must have been hours gone by. I'm sitting there, and
Mhm.
all these handicapped people are coming in and out.
Mhm.
There was no doors on the place. It was middle of February. I was freezing. I just wanted to sleep. And I'm waiting and waiting. And finally, I was like, okay, if he doesn't come out in 10 minutes, I see a lot of taxis going down the street. I'm going to grab one and I'm out of here, you know. And he never came out. So I grabbed my stuff, grabbed the cab, and I left.
Okay.
And to see how fast God reacts, within 2 days, I was on a plane back to Chicago. I failed every test on that day,
Wow.
you know.
Wow. Oh,
And so
incredible.
I had to go back to the United States. And when I came back, I was at my church, and then this happened with this woman in this office. So now I'm going to meet another woman about another handicap place.
Mhm.
And so I set up the meeting. I go there, and I swear to God, this is exactly how it went. I get there, and she's like, "Oh, I have a meeting right now. So what I want you to do is sit in the salon here." And so I sit down, and I'm surrounded by handicapped people in their wheelchairs, and they all circle in on me, you
Mhm.
know. And I'm like, I've been through this before, you know.
Mhm.
And so one of the workers could speak English. So I was like saying something to one of the handicaps, and he was interpreting for them. And we started off a conversation. Next thing you know, we're all laughing and joking and da da da. And she comes down, the big boss, and sees me laughing and joking with him. And she's like, "Ah, I see you're getting acquainted. Right now it's lunchtime. What I'm going to do, I have another meeting. I'm going to bring you downstairs to eat with all the handicapped people, you know." And I'm like, "Oh, this is getting, I've been here before, you know."
Right.
And so I went down and I sat down between two guys that were totally couldn't move their arms or anything. And so I got my food and they got theirs and they're just staring at their food. And so I pick up one spoon here, one spoon there, and I'm feeding both of them.
Yeah.
And we're laughing and joking. People are, and it was just wonderful, you know.
Mhm.
And the lady walks down and she sees me feeding two guys at one time, laughing and joking. And she goes, "Okay, I'm ready for you." We go upstairs to her office and she closes the door, sits down. She goes, "You're exactly what I need.
Oh,
When can you
yeah.
start?" You know, and I
There
said,
you go.
"Today."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, it
I
seems
moved
like
in.
yeah, go ahead, James. Go ahead.
I moved in, and then as soon as I got settled, they have a nice park next to the place, and I went outside and went into this park, and it was late at night, and I just got down on my face and I said, "Lord, I'm entering something I know nothing about. All the other
Wow.
jobs you led me to, I was always saying, okay, I can do this. I can do this. I'm
Yeah.
telling you right now, I can't do this unless you
Exactly.
do it through me,
Exactly.
unless you
It
do
was
it through me."
you were in over your head, you knew it, you turned it over. The saying, "Let go and let God," you turned it over to God, and you let him work through you, because it seemed like the first time you were tested, but you rejected it. But
Yeah.
then when it came back into your experience again,
Oh,
now
he
you
had
moved
circled it around right back in the
e
back door. Same
exactly.
situation. How are you going to deal with it this
Exactly.
time?
So
And I was like, oh,
I have to ask you a question here, James. Do you have someone who's monitoring your chat in case, because it's time for me to take a quick little break? Do you have someone who can tell you any questions? Because I'm going to ask the audience now if they have any questions or comments for you. Do you have
okay.
someone on your end that can? Uh,
I'm sure in the other room, I'm not sure if Frank is watching or not,
oh, okay. All right.
but
Well,
there really are a couple of things that the Lord put on my heart that I'm to speak about on how
and
deep
yes,
you need to
and
be surrendered.
right. We will
So,
get back to the rest of your story. It's very riveting and very fascinating. But like I explained to you in the rehearsal, that there will be a short break. I'll be
yeah,
gone
yeah,
for 2 minutes. If somebody can let you know if people are saying anything in the chat to you.
okay.
But I mean,
Well,
other
he
than that,
just stuck
you
his
can.
hand in the door and did this, so I don't know what that means. You're
Okay.
doing okay, or I have something for you.
He's probably
So,
watching, so he's telling you.
When she gets back, she's still a fever.
All right, James, I am back. Or did he take off?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, he's marking down a couple things, so but
Okay, that's
nothing yet.
so. Yeah, I'm back, and we can continue on with the story. I mean, I'm learning. I know a lot of your story, but I'm learning a lot tonight as well too. So let's carry on where you left off.
Okay. Now I'm in the handicap home. Everything is going great.
Mhm.
Um, I God had to correct me probably a month or two into doing this because I had gotten so gung ho. I was doing everything,
Mhm.
and I noticed that some of the workers were not doing their job
Right.
as efficiently as I was. You know,
Right.
and so there was one day where I was taking care of two guys, and another one had to go to the bathroom really bad, and he was signaling for
Yeah.
me to come. And I'm like, well, he's not one of my guys, you know. And so I went over and took him to the bathroom and brought him back out. And then when the worker showed up, and I said, why am I taking care of my two guys and doing your guy too, you know? And so it started a friction between me and the workers.
Mhm.
And it was very long shift that day. And when I got done, went in my room and I started to pray. And I was like, Lord, I don't know how I got through this day, but thank you for giving me the patience and everything. But I got to tell you, these workers, you know, they're not keeping up with me, a volunteer. And I was going off about how they were slacking.
Mhm.
And I felt the Lord say to me, they don't have me. They don't have me. And then it hit me. How on earth could they do this job without the Holy Spirit doing it for them, you know? And all of a sudden I had this incredible passion for them. So I started pitching and helping them even when they didn't ask, you know. And it started a reaction to where all of a sudden they started pitching in to help me out and I was helping them.
Right.
And the relationship was just amazing after that.
Yeah.
And I was their golden boy, you know.
Yeah.
Praise
Yeah.
God. You
Yeah.
know,
Right up until when
I
you
was
had,
the go I was the go-to guy, you know.
then you
And I
were.
was getting really into it. I was loving it.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden visa time came again.
That's exactly where
And
I was going with that, and then all of a sudden you had to leave. I just
I
had
had
to,
to leave again. I had
stop
to
this
leave again.
for 1 second. Is, Reina in the chat here? I hear you. She's asking for you to come on again as a guest. I'm just saying there's people in the chat that love your story and they wanna hear.
Already?
So yeah, you're already. I always invite my good guest back again, and
Mm.
she already said it for me. She says, "Please bring James on again." So yes,
Yeah.
I
I will
love
do that.
the
I will
story.
do
It's
that.
an incredible story, James. And so now
Yeah.
we're at the point where you were extradited basically back to the
I
U.S.
had to go back home. It was only for well, actually I didn't understand it. I was grappling with it. Lord, why were everything's going so well? Are you yanking me out of here again? And little did I know, I found out afterwards why he brought me home. It ended up I had to stay with my mom, and up to that point, we had been sort of working on a relationship because I had hurt her so bad,
Right,
and so I was like, okay, this is a repair time. You know,
right, right.
me and mom will rejoin each other and stuff. Little did I know that by that end of that year, dementia had set in, and she
Mhm.
had
Right.
to go into a assistant living place. So it was the last year that
Mhm.
I could have been there. And I spent every night with her. We would
Mhm.
go out and shopping and we would make pizza and sit and watch Christian movies. And just our relationship just blossomed. You know, it
Yeah.
was just, I was in
See,
love with my mom again, and she was
you
in love with her son again.
and you were meant to be there, so God moved you in that place where you needed to be for
Yeah.
your own
It
life.
wasn't until
That
the end of
incredible.
that I really realized, God knows more than I do, So,
Absolutely. Doesn't he always, right? Doesn't he
yeah.
always? And
So
and
after that was, okay,
sorry,
go ahead.
but it seemed like you were brought back to North American soil again because you needed to reconnect with your family. I mean, obviously, your mother was going through that. Plus, you needed to reconnect with your sisters, your kid brother, who, like my cousin, I'm still very upset that we lost him not that long ago. Um, and then your journey took you into your own personal like, okay, I'm gonna let you deal with that part of it. It's still a little emotional
Okay.
for me what you had to deal with once you came back home. Can you tell
Yeah.
the audience a little bit about that? Are you okay with that?
Yeah. I don't, my brothers and sisters um, were not really any part of that year.
Yeah,
John was off in
right.
God knows where
John,
doing
John
his rock
stop
and roll
doing
thing.
doing what John does, right?
Billy, George was at work all the time at ABC.
Yeah,
Uh, Jeannie was living down the street, but me and her, our relationship was the pits.
right.
And Patty was married and
Yeah,
raising her
her-
children. So it was me and mom,
yeah.
which I think the Lord meant it to be that way.
Exactly.
You
You
know,
guys were meant to have that connection and reconnect again. And then it just
So
okay,
go ahead.
I'll let you tell the story because I know a lot happened as a result after that.
Well, that winded down, it was time to go back out in the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I was in contact with my boss at the handicap home, and she says, "Yeah, we really need you back, but they're refusing to give me a visa for you right now. So you might have to find something else to do for the next 3 or 6 months."
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So it was a long process. And finally, of all the places we searched, Moldova was the only one left.
Mm.
And so I was like, what is Moldova? I haven't even heard of it before, let alone I'm going there now. And I found out that it was like the poorest European country on the map.
Right.
And so as it drew closer, I started to feel a little ill. And I noticed one day there was a lump in my throat, and I was feeling warm and just powerless during that time while I'm trying to get my act together to go to Moldova.
Mhm.
And then the next day, that lump was under my arm and then was traveling around my body
Mhm.
throughout the next couple of weeks. And I was feeling rather sick. I didn't have any insurance. I didn't know what to do. So I figured, oh, well, I'm dying. Um, going to go off to some godforsaken country that I didn't even heard of and die there. So let's do it. And so I went forth with the program. I said, okay, God, here we go, and just watch over me.
Mhm.
And so the day that I was leaving for Moldova, I became violently ill. I was vomiting all day, and I just felt like I had been run over by a truck. And so here I am on the plane feeling awful, and I had to travel all the way to Turkey, and then from Turkey back to Moldova because they didn't have a major airport in Moldova, of course.
Mhm.
So I get there and I'm really ill, and they put me in this uh, handicap home with 400 orphans. They're all orphans, handicapped, mental and physical mixture. Some
Right.
were both,
Right.
and nobody spoke English except for the manager,
Okay.
the woman that ran the place.
Mhm.
And so this is the big story that changed my life right here. So,
Mhm.
um, or it really gave me focus on that it's not about me, it's all about Jesus. And the scripture verse that Apostle Paul brings out is, when we are weak, that is when God is strong. And I was about to find out this in a major way, you know. So I got there and I carried on. I was in charge of 15 very handicapped boys, but 8 or 9 of them were in wheel beds. They had been dislocated hips from birth and it never was fixed. So their bodies were like pretzels, you know, and they were in beds their entire life. You know, they're all in their 20s or so by now, in diapers. They had to be fed mush every day. Um, it was very difficult, very, very, very difficult. But I did it. I did it with heart. I had to pray for strength every day because, I mean, every time you would even touch these people, they would writhe in pain.
Right.
And and so I was talking to one of the workers who knew a little bit of English, and she told me that these individuals have never left this building, let alone the compound. They've never been outside ever for 20 years of their life, lying in that bed.
They've never
And
been
so I
out.
said, "That's
They've never seen the light of day ever.
no, nothing, nothing, just through the windows or whatever."
Oh my
And I
goodness.
said, you got to be kidding me.
Mm.
They've never felt the sun on their face or the smell of
Wow.
freshly mowed grass or anything. And they're
Breathe
like, "No, we
fresh
can't take them
air.
out." And I said, "Why can't you take them out?" You know, well, you know, blah blah blah. And I was like, that's not washing with me, you know. And so they were on these wheel beds, and
Mhm.
the shape of these beds, the wheels didn't have rubber on them. They were just
Just wheels,
metal
metal
wheels,
wheels.
no
Okay.
rubber, nothing. And
Wow.
so one day, the worker that was in charge of the place went off to do something. And I said, "Okay, it's my chance." And I lined them all up, took them all outside underneath this giant cherry tree, lined them all up underneath the cherry tree.
Okay.
And they were like, "Oh, churchery, churchery." That means cherries, I guess, in Romania. And so I started feeding them all cherries, you know, taking
Oh,
the seeds out. And
yeah.
they had cherry juice all over their face, but they're laughing and da, da, da. I got scolded for doing it, but I didn't care. I said, "What are
Yeah.
you gonna do? Fire me? I'm a volunteer for crying out loud."
Good
You
for
know,
you. Good for
these
you.
guys have never been outside, you
Yeah.
know. We have
Wow.
to fix that right now, you know. And these guys, glory to God, they just loved me, you know.
Wow.
And so anyway, and during this time, I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and I was up to like 100 temperature.
Oh.
And the owner of the compound came to me one day and said, "We have an opportunity for 10 of these individuals here who have never left the camp. Never. Some of them are 30 and they've never left outside the walls. And we
Wow.
have an opportunity to bring them to a giant theater in Chisinau where
Mm.
they can see puppets and uh, clowns, and just it was
Mhm.
a variety show.
Right.
Would you volunteer to take them because none of the workers want to do it?" So I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll do it." You know. And so she said, "There's going to be 10 of them. One of them's in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
One can walk, sort of, but the other 8 have walkers. So it's going to be a very difficult job. Are you
Mhm.
up to it?" And I was like, you know, "Lay it on me. You know, let's do it." These kids have never seen the outside,
Yeah.
and for them to go to something like this would be amazing.
Mhm.
And so I agreed, and I began to get sicker and sicker. And the day that I was supposed to take them, I had 102 temperature, and I was blowing green and blood out of my nose.
Oh my.
And I got up in the morning and I walked out of my room, and the woman that runs the compound was walking out of the office. She took one look at me and she said, "Are you all right?" And I said, you know, and she says, "You don't look so well. I'm just going to have to cancel this trip, you know." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. That's all I've heard from these kids all week about they're going
Yeah.
to be going to this thing, and there's no way that I'm going to break their hearts. And she said, "Yeah, but you look." I said, "If I die in the process, so be it. But I am not going to let these kids down."
Mm,
And so she said, "Okay." So
mm.
she set it all up. The evening came. I got all ready. The bus came. We got all the kids in there. One of the kids, the one that was in a wheelchair, had no feet, nothing below the ankle,
Oh,
no foot, nothing.
oh,
So he couldn't walk or anything like that.
mhm,
So, but he had never been out of the compound. So I'm like, okay, this is good. This is really gonna be hard. So we went down there. It was an hour drive, hour and a half drive to Kishinev from there, and we get to this place, and it's this immense theater, just with
mhm.
spiral staircases and balconies and
Oh, wow.
everything carpeted. So I get out of the van and help all the kids to get
Mhm,
into this building, and we're supposed to meet a certain usher that's going to show us where we're going to be sitting.
right.
And so I had a big bag of treats for each one of them. And so we go in there, and the guy says, I have to find out exactly where you're sitting. So sit here. So I put all the guys down on the benches there. And
Mhm,
one of them had to go to the bathroom. The one that could sort of walk, he was a little kid, maybe 10 or 11 years old. So I brought him to the bathroom and let him go in the stall. I came back out, and like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes later, we're still sitting there. I'm like, where is this kid? So I sent one of the other ones in there to find him. And he comes out and he's like, oh my God, he's locked in the stall. The
oh,
kid didn't know how to get out of the
get out.
stall.
Right, makes sense.
And so here I am, 102 temperature, sick as
No,
a dog. So I go in there and I'm trying to get this kid to
get out.
in English, telling somebody who only knows Romanian how to how
Right.
to
Yeah.
twist the knob, and he wouldn't do it. He was crying and
Oh,
screaming, and so I was looking around, and I noticed that each stall was like con cinder block,
right.
and there was about this much room between the cinder block and the ceiling.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's the only way I'm going to be able to get him out of there. So I went into the next stall, crawled up on the toilet, hopped up onto the wall, and then had to squeeze myself through into
Oh,
the stall he was in. And so I opened up the door and let him out.
oh my.
And then we went back out there, and then the usher's like, we're ready. I'm going to take you to your seat.
Mhm.
So he says on the main floor, front row. So I'm like, all right, front row. And so um, all these guys, I had to put them in front of me because I had to push the wheelchair with the guy with no feet.
Mhm.
And so they're struggling down this thing. We go all the way to front row.
Mhm.
I get them all seated in their chairs. The usher showed me where to put all the the walkers and the wheelchair
Right.
and stuff like that. I had to pick the guy with no feet up and put him in his seat
Seat, yeah. Mhm.
on the
And
aisle.
and you
So
were
the guy
doing
with no
all of
feet
this while you were super sick?
on my by
Yeah.
myself while I was violently ill.
Wow.
And
How
so we're
did you
all
make
sitting
it
there.
through?
Huh?
How did you
I
make it
passed out
through?
all the what?
How did you make it through being so sick, dealing with all of
Oh,
this
wait
stress?
till you hear what happens next. This is nothing.
Oh, wow.
We gotta get everybody seated. And all of a sudden, we're all sitting there getting ready for the show, and here comes the usher, and he looks at me and he says, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake. These are not your seats. You have the front row, but it's in the balcony." So I'm like, "In the balcony?" And so he goes, "Yeah, follow me." So
Oh
I
my
had to grab all the kids' treats,
god,
put them back in
go
the
all
bag,
the
go get the walkers, bring the walkers back, and then pick up the guy with no feet and put him in the wheelchair. And so we go out there, and it's a spiral staircase that goes
yeah.
all the way up to this
How
thing.
did you
So
manage
how
that?
am I going to get all these guys up there? So
Right,
what I had to do was I gathered all their walkers, went up the stairs myself, put the walkers up at the top, came back down, got 9 of the guys to line up on the railing, and had to walk behind them all the way up, and
alright,
then handed them their walkers and said, "Don't
right.
leave."
Yeah.
I have to go back down and get the guy with no feet. And so I went down there, had to fold up his wheelchair, carry it all the way up the spiral staircase to the top,
And
put it
then
there, come back down, pick him up, put him over my shoulder, and go all the way back up again through the stair. And
I'm
so I get him, everybody's there. The usher shows us to the front row in the balcony. We're sitting there, okay, everything's fine. Da, 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 we can still see good.
yeah.
And so I pass out the treats again, and we're sitting there waiting for the show to start. And all of a sudden, I see Lydia Popa, who was the manager of the place, shows up. And I
Okay.
see her on the main floor talking to the usher. And she's talking and losing her temper. And she's pointing up here and she's pointing down there and this and that. And then she's like, no, down here. And I'm like, what do you mean, no, down there? So the
Oh my.
usher comes up and said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Those were your seats. So here we go again. You know,
Oh no, you didn't.
so
You didn't have to do it, did you?
I had to get all the walkers, give it to them.
Oh,
Okay, here we go. Then I had to lead the parade down the spiral staircase, come back up,
uh,
get the guy in the wheelchair, carry him down, put
uh,
him on the bench, go back up, grab the wheelchair, I bring them all down.
oh my.
Finally, and I'm like, I'm not moving anymore. This is it.
Right?
Throw me out, throw me out. But I'm not doing. I'm sick as a dog here,
Right.
and I'm carrying people everywhere. And
So what
so ended
happened
up
that
being,
night? Like, what happened that night? Were you able to sit through the show and everything with these people?
yeah. But I mean, I was so happy I didn't have to move anymore. I mean,
Well, aside from
uh, it was a great show. The kids loved it, man.
oh, that
And we got back home, and I just I felt like I was going to die when I got back. So when I got in my room, usually I locked the door because the, these guys were constantly walking in and out of my room.
oh,
So I had to lock it so they wouldn't come in.
right,
And so that night I was like, no, I think I better leave it open because in case I perish during the night,
right, right.
they'll have easy access to come in and carry my corpse out. That's how bad it was.
Uh,
So I wake up in the morning and I felt I feel pretty good, and
yeah.
I'm up. Okay, where's the lump today? Nowhere to be found. So then I go and take my temperature, 97.9. I
What?
was totally healed.
Are
You know,
you kidding me?
no, I hand to
Oh,
God. I was
oh,
like,
wow. Are you
this
kidding?
was like the major test of sacrificing yourself for the good of others. And he just healed me immediately, and it never came back.
Ah,
And so I made a coffee, and this is the final part of the story, but this is when God really spoke to me. I went outside and I
mm,
made a coffee, and I sat at the top of these steps. And it's like 12 or 13 concrete steps that lead up to the entrance to this place. And I always sat at the top in the morning, drank my coffee. And all these kids start coming out at 7 o'clock, and they all come up the stairs and they're sitting all around me talking about the event from the night
right.
before. They were all giddy and talking. And I just wanted to finish my coffee. And all of a sudden I see the kid in the wheelchair
Yeah.
being pushed by another individual, and he's pointing at me. And so the kid's like, okay. So he brings it all the way up to the steps and lifts up the chair, and the guy with no feet falls on the
Mm,
steps, crawls on his knees all the way up to the top where I was sitting. And all the kids that were sitting around me parted like the Red Sea. And he came up on his knees, crawling, got up, gave me a big hug and a kiss on the cheek, and said, "Thank you so much" in Romanian. Turned around and crawled back down the stairs, got in his wheelchair, and was off.
you
And I was so shocked by this. I was like, oh my God. So
what
I
an
was like, okay, guys, time for me to do a prayer walk.
mm,
And every time I walked around this compound, all the handicaps, there was 400 of them.
uh,
They would come out and line the streets as I walked down doing my prayer walk, and they would yell, "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," and they would run out and shake my hand or kiss my hand or hug me, and this happened every day, and it was
Oh
no
my
different, you know.
goodness.
So I finally finished my prayer walk, and I needed a phone card, so I had to walk into town, which is like a 3 mile walk downhill, it's uphill back up, you know.
Right,
So I get into this shop and I'm trying to explain to this girl behind the counter who knows no English that I need a phone card for my phone.
right.
And she was like, you know, and I'm like, I can't get her to understand me. So all of a sudden behind me, I hear a voice and it's a guy who says, "You need help? I know English." I'm like, "Yes,
Mhm,
yes, please." You know, I need a phone card for my phone. And so he tells her in Romanian what I need.
mhm.
She gives me the card. I pay for it. I go outside. I'm sitting on a bench outside, punching in the numbers so I can have my phone work again. And within a couple of minutes, he comes walking out. He's got a bag of chips and a Coke or whatever. And he sits down next to me on the bench and he's eating his chips and drinking his pop. And he looks at me and he says, "Where are you from?" You know, and I said, "America." He goes, "Yeah, well, where in America?" And I said, "Well, Illinois, Chicago area." "Ah, why are you here?" And I said, "I've
Fair
been asking myself
question.
that for like 2 months, you
Yeah,
know."
fair question.
And I said, "I really don't know what I'm doing here. I'm really trying to find my way." But and he goes, "Where are you working, volunteering?" And I say, "I volunteer at the big handicap orphanage." And he's
Mhm,
like, "Oh," and he said the name of the place. And he goes, "That's a really hard place." I'm a social worker, so I know that's a really, really, really hard place. And I said, "It is, it is."
mhm,
And I told him the story, what happened the night before.
mhm.
And as I was walking there, all the kids yelling "Jesus, Jesus," and hugging me and following me down the road. And so I was like, you know, I've had some good times and bad times here, but I really don't know if I'm really doing well or not.
Mhm.
So he looks at me and he laughs and he says, "You must be doing something right if all the little orphans are calling you Jesus."
Right.
And I was like, "Is that what Jesus means?" You know? And I was like, "Oh my God," you
Oh,
know?
oh my goodness,
And
Jake,
so
you brought such joy and happiness and new experience to these people. They must have just been over the moon happy with.
and I was walking back, and I only got a block or two up this dirt road before I had to sit down underneath a tree, and I just started crying
Oh,
because I had just learned that that scripture verse that was going through my head. It was, "When we are weak, God shows himself strong."
yeah.
And I had just realized that it was Jesus doing all this work through me. And that's what they were recognizing, the
Wow.
character of Jesus.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I was like, "Oh my God," you know, I
Mm,
was so blown away,
yeah.
you know. And the next day, I got a phone call from my boss in Israel, and she's like, "I got your visa." And
Mm,
so I was in and out of there. And the day I left, um, almost half of the orphanage followed me to the gate.
wow.
And they were all crying and
Yeah.
they're all, you know, sticking their heads between the gates and "Bye, James," you know. And as I'm getting in a cab, I'm like, "Am I doing the right thing by leaving?" I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
I was really torn, you know,
I can
um,
see it. I can see it.
you
Yeah.
know, but I had done something in the 3 months there that no worker or volunteer had ever done there, you know,
Mhm.
and it was out of being absolutely totally sick and without any energy, all this happened.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I knew
And
that
then
I don't have anything else to fear because I know God is operating through me as
well,
long as I totally surrender and allow Him to do the work.
exactly. And then when you came back to, American soil, you were you were feeling okay, right? You were feeling when you
No, I
came
went
back
straight
to
from Moldova to Israel.
oh, you went to Israel from
But
there. Oh, right,
yeah,
because you left Israel to come back to the United States.
I had to take
Mhm,
a plane from Moldova to Romania,
mm.
which was one of those six seaters with the propellers.
Yeah.
So I was praying the whole time
Oh,
because
boy.
it was like these planes go down, man, you know.
Mhm.
So, but I made it back to Israel and I was in the handicap home for 6 more years.
Right. Mhm.
And now my last little story, if you still have time for it,
Yeah,
before I
yeah,
go into
that's what
the
I wanted to, get to that because you went back to Israel and then you ended up having to leave Israel. You got
yeah.
extradited back to the US.
Well, it was 6 years, but it was coming to an end,
Right.
and I knew it, and I didn't know what to do. I was like, I found myself in the garden at the handicap home praying,
Mhm.
and it turned into a sort of a rant. I was just like, Lord, why would you pull me out of here when I finally found myself? I finally see my purpose in life.
Right.
They send me back to Chicago. Are you
Mhm.
serious? You know, I was like, I have no job there. I have no car. I have nowhere to live.
Mhm.
What is this? Some kind of game that you're playing with me? And I was very frustrated.
Mhm.
And I was just like, Lord, don't play games with me. This is why are you playing this game with me? And so I finished my rant or prayer, whatever you want to call it, and
Mhm.
I left the garden and I went through the gates to go across the street to get some snacks or something. I don't know what it was. And as I'm walking out the gates, this woman who I knew very well, she was a messianic dancer, very, very gifted woman who hears from God all the time. And I'm walking out the gate and she comes walking around the corner and she's like, "Oh my God, James, God just spoke to me about you." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" I was waiting for a spanking. And she said, "I don't know if it means anything to you, but he said, this is not a game."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh my God."
Oh, wow.
I just got done praying. Is this a game? And she comes up out of nowhere and says, "God says this is not a game."
Mhm.
And so I knew immediately. I had to go back in the garden and I was like on my face, "Lord, forgive me. Whatever you want, I'll do it. I know I don't have a job or a home or a car in Chicago, but if that's what you want,
We'll figure it
I'll
out.
do it." You
Mhm.
know. So the very next day,
Mhm.
I'm at work and there's a buzzer, the front gate buzz, and I go to open the front gate and there is this gentleman there, and he says, "Hello, my name is Roger Hoagland, and I'm a missionary here in Israel, but I also own handicap homes in Louisville, Kentucky.
Right.
And I just have a really heart for handicapped people. So could I come once a week or so and play music, me and my wife, for the handicapped people?" So I said, "I don't think it's going to be a problem." I asked my boss, and he said, "Yeah, bring it on, man."
Mhm.
And so I said, "Yeah, yeah." He said, "Okay, we'll come by every Friday evening before Shabbat."
Mhm.
And so he did so every week. And he
Mhm.
would follow me around and watch and talk to me and stuff like that.
Was this when
And
you were
then,
in Kentucky?
no, this was when I was in Israel.
Oh, you were
The
still
final days, the
oh,
final
final
days.
days in Israel, okay.
What I was like, what am I going to do in Chicago?
Right.
I had prayed, as I just said, I don't have a car, I don't have a
Yeah,
job, I don't
exactly.
have anything, and I don't want to be in Chicago. And so all of a sudden, this guy shows up,
Mhm.
and I didn't think nothing of it. I just
Right.
let him in. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, he comes in, and I'm like, "Oh, you're going to come play music?" He goes, "No, I'm here to talk to you." And I said,
Mhm.
"Okay." He said, "Can me and my wife take you out to eat?" So I told my boss they want to take me out to eat. And he's like, "Yeah, go ahead, go ahead." So I went. And as
Mhm.
soon as we sit down in order, he says, "Okay, this is the reason I own handicap homes in Louisville.
Oh,
And we are in desperate need of somebody to manage a couple of our homes because we don't
uh,
have somebody that knows what you know. I've watched you for these
okay.
last 3 weeks,
Mhm.
and I know you are exactly the guy we need.
So
I'll supply you with a car.
yeah,
I will supply you with a job, making 30 grand a year, whatever, which is a lot better than zero as a volunteer.
right.
So, and he said, you can live in the handicap home that you take care of the people. So
Oh,
you won't even have to worry about rent. So right there, one day later, God answers my prayer by bringing this guy with
right,
the
exactly.
job, the
He's
car, and the house.
and
So I'm like,
what? Thanks for clearing that up because I remember when you came back to America, yeah, I know you're from Chicago. It's like, how is he already in Kentucky? How did that happen so quickly? But now you explained it actually happened in Israel. And then when you came back to America, that's how you ended
yeah.
up there, because I
So
was
I was there
there.
three
Mhm.
and a half years.
Right.
Very hard job.
Right.
Very, very hard job. It
Mhm.
took a lot on me. It was 24/7. I never had any time off.
Right.
Um, every once in a while, I would get um, an hour or two, to go
Mm.
run into the woods and scream
Right.
because that just to let off everything that had been piling on me. And it was at this point where I started near the end, started feeling really, really ill.
Right.
And this is where I finally was able to go to the doctor,
Mhm.
and he's like, "I don't think something good is happening here, so I need to for
Mhm.
you to go get a MRI or
Right.
something."
Yeah.
And so I went, and then I got a call a couple days later to come see the doctor, and that's when he said, "I got really, really bad news for you. You have a monstrous cancer in your colon, and it traveled up to your liver, and you need to see a surgeon to find out what to do because it doesn't look good." And I mean, to be in that position is very, you know. Um, but God had brought me all the way to that point. So I didn't talk to anybody. People are calling me. What did the doctor say? I'll talk to you later. I have to go home. I have to go sit at the pond that was on the property.
Right.
And I remember as I sat there, sort of dazed, and I just said, "Okay, Lord, I don't feel like I'm done yet, you know, um, but I'm not going to pray, why me?
Mhm.
I'm not going to pray, oh, please, please, please heal me because I don't want to die yet.
Mhm.
My only prayer is that you would give me your wisdom
Mhm.
that I could make the decisions that I need to make right now because I'm lost, you know." And I get emotional when I talk about
Yeah.
this, but
Yeah.
he answered that prayer so fast. The next day, um, I had to go in for a colonoscopy, and I went in there, and one of the girls that was a staff member that helped me out sometimes, Roger's daughter-in-law, took me for my colonoscopy because you had to have somebody with you. And so we went there, and I had the colonoscopy, and the doctor came in afterwards and said I couldn't even get past this thing to do the colonoscopy. He said, "You're in dire need, you know, for chemo right now." And I was like, "Nah, I don't think so." Um, he said, "This is the deal. You got 3 to 6 months, and it's over.
Mhm.
So if you go into chemo right now, you might get a couple more months out of it or whatever." And I was like, "Well, yeah, so I can have 9 months of being violently ill, you know." So I was like, "No, no, I need a second opinion." Um, and he got upset, but I was like, "Hey, it's my body, you know.
Mhm.
I want a second opinion. I'll get one." So I just prayed, "Lord, help me out." And
Mhm.
so the next day I was praying, and I came back in the house, and I felt the Lord say, "I want you to call the cancer place that he had set me up for chemo, even though I said no." They called me and said, "Oh, here, all set for your chemo." And I was like, "What? I never even asked for this." And
Mhm.
so I felt the Lord tell them, cancel me off the list. It's over.
Yeah.
Call all the doctors and the hospitals that you owe money to from the tests and stuff like that. Settle up the payment and cut them all off.
Yeah.
I got another plan.
Oh,
So I was like, okay. So I called canceled everything. And then I went outside to the pond again, which was my praying place. And I was like, okay, now what? It's now
yeah.
got nothing. I'm dying in 6 months and I got nothing, you know. And so
Hmm.
about an hour or two later, I get a phone call. It's my sister.
Mhm.
And she said, "I'm coming out there. I'm going to spend some time with you. And I'm going to take you home to Chicago to live with me so you can go to the hospital here." So I was like, okay, God's moving already.
Mhm.
And so I let them know I retired
Mhm.
and went back to Chicago, and things got really, really, really bad during my two. I had the shakes every night. I was sweating. I would go through at least 3 or 4 t-shirts a night, soaking wet. I was all of a sudden 150 pounds, 145 pounds. And so, and I had to shake so bad that my sister had to help me get dressed. I had to wear diapers. It was really bad. The tumor had gone into the bladder. So now everything from my colon was going into my bladder. So everything that usually comes out the other end was coming out the other end.
Yeah.
And it was the most painful thing I ever been through, And I was just like, I just want to die. And
Oh,
so finally, my sister Jean, actually, I was outside praying one morning and I was laying in the grass in like a fetal position. And I was like, Lord, I can't take one more day. I can't take one more day. If there's something I got to do, you got to point it to me right now. I can't take another day. So I went in the house and all of a sudden my phone rings. It's my sister and Jeannie. And she says, how's it going? And I was like, that's not so good. And I told her what was going on. And she said, let me call you right back. So she called back and she says, I want you right now to wake Patty up, have her take you to the hospital because you have sepsis, you know.
okay.
And I was like, okay. So I knew immediately it was the Lord. He had just answered that prayer. And so I
Yeah.
woke my sister up. She jumped out of bed because she was waiting for the day for me to say, take me to the hospital. And so I went into the hospital and they did a bunch of tests. And I mean, I'm speaking honestly, doctor after doctor after doctor came in to see me in the emergency room. And they were all like, no, 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 no. Well, we don't know what to do. It's as far above our pay grade. What you got going on there, I've never seen before, you know. So finally, I'm thinking, okay. And Patty was with me. And finally, at the end of the day, this 75, 76-year-old doctor walks in, his hair all scruffled up, and he looked like Albert Einstein almost. And, and he looks at me, at my chart and he looks at me and he says, are you ready for war? And I said, yeah, I guess so. And he goes, I'm going to admit you, but I'm going to spend this whole week doing all kinds of tests. Some you're not going to like, some okay. But I have to have you do a cleanse every single day. So starting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I had to drink a gallon of stuff, and you're in the bathroom the rest of the day. And I
Oh,
had to do this 4 days in a row. So by the time I got to the point where he came in, he said, I examined all the tests and I found a way to get it out. And he says, I'm going to ignore the liver right now because this thing that's going on in your colon is going to kill you if I don't do something now. So he said, we're going to operate on Friday afternoon.
wow.
And this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have to take out 1/3 of your colon and 1/3 of your bladder. And you probably have to have a colostomy bag for a while because
Mm.
I have to separate the
Yeah. Yeah.
major intestines
Yeah.
because I'm cutting out a whole bunch of it, just to be
Hmm.
cautious. So I'm going to try my best to fuse it, and hopefully you won't have to have it, but I would be prepared for it.
Okay.
Um, so where was I? He just gave me some paper.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. You were just talking about how the doctor was explaining to you what could be happening
yeah.
going forward.
So, but he says I can get it out. You
Yeah.
know. So I was like, and he goes, it's going to be a 4.5 hour surgery, and it's going to be very intense. But so I need your permission to do it.
Hmm.
And I was like, what have I got to lose? Go for it, man. What? I got a choice: lay here and die, or
Hmm. Yeah.
do the surgery. So I went into surgery, and it went amazingly. Um, when I came to, I was in a lot of pain, of course, because I had my whole chest cut open.
Yeah.
But the first thing I did, besides scream for morphine, was look at my side, and there was no colostomy bag there. So he had successfully attached the
Nice.
intestines back together.
Yeah. Nice.
you know. So I mean, I was ready to hug and kiss this guy.
Yeah, for sure.
And 4 days later, they discharged me. They said the way you have bounced back is absolutely miraculous.
Yeah, we
Your
were.
your wound is almost totally healed. and
You
so
know
we're sending you home.
you know what, James? We were all following your story on Facebook as it was unfolding. I could not believe how quickly all of a sudden you went from such grave circumstances to, things are
Yeah.
looking good and everything. Like, obviously, God was by your side throughout this whole thing, and He's been helping you throughout your.
Without Jesus, I would not be
Absolutely,
talking to you right now. He
absolutely,
is my savior. He's my best friend.
yeah.
He is everything.
You have been tested, it
And
looks like, your whole adult life, and right up until present times when you just recently lost your brother, you went through the cancer scare, everything is going on in your life all around you, and yet here you are. You're still willing to come on this podcast and tell people your story and to give a message of hope. And what is your message of hope? Like, what do you have to say to the audience who've just heard this incredible story coming from you?
you cannot survive in this world, especially right now, without something bigger than you to put your hope in. And my only, and I mean only remedy is Jesus Christ, period.
Absolutely.
And I don't know where you are in your lives, anybody that's listening out there, but in these dark times that we have coming up, we all need hope. And I tried hoping in this and hoping in that, and that as the stories that I told you, God is for us. He will
Mhm.
step on the battlefield with
Right.
him. We can't back
Mhm.
on the sofa and watch Andy Griffith reruns while he goes out there and fights our battles.
Right.
We have to go with him. But he promises that he will, like it says, the battle belongs to the Lord. But
Abs-
you got to be on the battlefield with him. And
absolutely.
I don't know what any more I can say from what I've already told you is that there is one answer and one answer alone, and that is Jesus Christ, period.
Absolutely.
If my life is not a witness of that, then I don't know what else to say.
I believe,
But
the saying,
this is,
let go and let God when you're in the worst possible moments of your life. It's
Mhm,
so true. I've been in
mhm,
situations like that myself. I've spoke with other people too. When you just give it over, it's amazing. All you have to do is have that faith. And my dear, you have the faith like so
yeah.
strong. And
But
look
it's
what it's gotten you through.
his faith that he imparts onto me, though. It's his faith.
Yeah,
Okay. He is the author and finisher of our faith. And he doesn't just give us a measure of faith at the start and say, okay, here's your faith. Good luck.
right.
Hope I see you at the end.
Yeah. No,
He's with us every step of the
exactly.
way.
But
And through
your faith and belief enough
each
to
thing he
give it
leads us,
over to him is what brought you to where you are right now. You're freezing up a little bit on
well,
that.
that's what all these things I just talked about
Right.
was him proving
Proving it.
that
Yeah,
I am your strength. I
absolutely.
am I am the truth. I am the life. I am the way. There is no other way that to the Father
Exactly.
said it be through me.
I am the
And so I believe that 100%. And that's how I tend to walk until the day that he does bring me home,
absolutely.
which is going to be quite a while from now because
Absolutely.
there's business that
James,
needs
you
to be
keep
done.
beating the odds. You keep moving forward and moving forward. Your faith is strong, and God willing, you will be with us for many, many years to come. I want to
Yeah.
ask you one thing. I always ask my guests in the parting times where we're in 2024, the early stages of it. What do you feel that is going to come to the world, the country, the world, and everything coming forward for 2024? Do you have any messages? Do you have any messages of hope, of faith, of what would you say about 2024? What do you
Yes, I
feel?
do. But for 1 second, but Frank just brought in a question that somebody had asked. It was a very simple answer. It says, "What year was your surgery?" I
Oh,
was operated on in April of 2022. So the doctors in Kentucky that I got 3 to 6 months live,
mhm,
that's over. It's
yeah.
been out. It's
Yeah,
almost
exactly
2 years since my
right.
surgery.
Yeah, there
So
you
April 2022, for whoever asked that question.
go. Okay.
Could you run that by me again?
No, I was just
I
saying,
didn't hear
what
it
do
all.
you feel in your heart of hearts that we can expect from 2024? It's a very important year for a lot of reasons, but like for the globe, for the world, what do you feel going forward? What are your feelings about what we have to face as a nation, as people in this, God's earth? What do you feel we are
It's
going to
going to be
be
a year.
encountering?
It's going to be. It's going to be a year that's going to try everybody's soul.
Mm,
It's going to be a very scary, serious year. And if you don't have hope to cling to and ride through it, you're not going to make it.
Thank you for
So,
that.
like I said before, and I'll say it again, grab a hold of Jesus and don't let go, man.
Amen to that.
That's all I can. That's all I can say. I'm not going to get into anything political,
Exactly.
but Trump would be a good idea to be in there. But the savior of the world is not Donald Trump. The savior of the world is Jesus.
100%.
Period.
100.
So I will trust in Jesus and hope for Donald Trump.
Well, there
But
you go. That's a beautiful way to end this podcast because I love it. I feel that we are all part of God's army right now and we are moving forward, doing the best we can in 2024. I have a lot of hope for it. I do believe that things will end up exactly the way they need to end up. So,
and one last little note.
okay.
Uh, 2 weeks ago, I had CT, and I'm still in total remission in the colon and the bladder. Everything's fine.
All right.
The lesions on my liver have shrunk.
All right.
The doctors say probably 3 or 4 more chemos and I'm done,
Yeah.
and that I'm free to travel again.
And you're planning to go
So
back to
soon,
Israel.
back to Israel and then possibly to Romania. It's up to God. I
Yeah.
mean, after all of this,
Yeah.
what He's led me through, wherever He points, I'm going.
Exactly. You'll follow
If it's
his lead,
Iraq, I'm going to
right?
say, "Are you kidding me?" Okay, I'll go.
You,
I'll go. But
uh,
He knows my heart for Israel, and I believe before this year is up, I'll be there again.
absolutely. Also, too, for
And
anyone in the
thank you
chat,
very
if they'd like to message you, is it okay, James, if they message you on your social media? You have Facebook, right?
Yes, you can contact me on Facebook. I don't have any of the others.
Okay, so
Um,
just James
it's, just type up James Pierson,
Pierson Facebook,
Pierson,
and you can
and
message
type
him
me a
there.
message.
Exactly. If you have a message or you have any questions for James, he's saying go ahead to Facebook if you're on Facebook and message him as James Pearson. He will be happy, more than happy to answer your questions. Or very interesting. The people in the chat are just loving you, James. I have to say, you're not watching the chat here, but they really are very happy with you. They're requesting you come back. So we will have to. Would you be willing to come back on the show again sometime?
Yes, ma'am. Well, of
Yeah.
course, of course.
Okay.
You're
Great.
my cousin. How could I refuse?
That's true. We are family. Love you to
Yeah.
pieces, cousin. Mwah. I'll let you
God
go.
bless you. Thank you so much.
And thanks so
God
much.
bless everybody. Jesus is the truth.
God bless. Love you
He
much,
is,
cousin.
he is the way.
Take it easy. Okay.
Amen. God bless.
Amen. You'll have to click out.
All right, I'm clicking.
You're clicking. All right, everybody. Wow, I know this podcast went a little long tonight, but I couldn't I couldn't stop. Look at this, Raina, bring James back. So unfortunately, guys, he couldn't see you because he didn't have the chat up there. He had someone in the other room who was sort of giving him questions, but he will be able to look at the chat tomorrow once it's all posted and stuff. But yeah, he was like, what did you guys think of this podcast? It's a pretty extraordinary story, right? Oh, look at Mama Bear. I thought, you know what, Mama Bear, I thought you would love this podcast. I'm so glad that you could be on here with it. And yes, I will have James back again. And I don't know what to say, but thank you all for for joining Ninja, mwah, Mark, all of you guys on here. I just love you to pieces. Yolanda, I know there's a lot of people on the chat. I was not able to keep up with what was going on here. Just saw, the odd thing here and there. Frank, I thank you all for coming to tonight's podcast. And I want to remind you again that next week it's going to be on a Saturday because of the Super Bowl Sunday. So we don't want to be taking anybody away from Super Bowl Sunday. So it will be same time, 7 p.m. Central, Saturday next week. And my guest will be Chris Reck from Minnopond. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be so much fun. And I can't wait for that one. But I'm very happy you all really enjoyed James's story here. It was an extraordinary story. And thank you all for coming out. You know what, guys? All of you in the chat really give a good thank you to the mods, Tony and Ninja, Reina. You guys really stepped up tonight. You were doing amazing in the chat here. Love you guys. Thank you so much, Amanda. I hope you guys have a really good night, and we'll see you back here remember, next Saturday, not Sunday. So we're going to be Saturday Night Live with Star Lourdes next week. Namaste. Much love to each and every one of you. Have a great week. Star Lord is signing off for now. Take care.